Today's video is sponsored by KEH Camera. Today we're going to talk all about buying used gear and buying budget gear and what basically the beauty of budget gear really is. Photography is so much fun for a million different reasons, but for people like me, and I think a lot of people, even if they don't really want to admit it, a lot of us are just gearheads. We think cameras are fun to play with. We love different lenses and camera bodies and formats. It's just fun to nerd out on that kind of stuff. And naturally, like any hobby or creative space, there are a number of different brands and kind of price levels for those brands. It's really, really easy to think you need the newest and latest and greatest. I mean, especially in the digital space, we see new stuff being introduced all the time, and what you were so excited to buy just a year or 6 months ago, now all of a sudden you're looking at it and seeing all of the flaws, all of the reasons that you absolutely have to upgrade. But in reality, you can do a lot with very little, and often for a really low price point. And to kind of drive that point home, this Minolta XGM, this was my very first camera. I learned basically everything I know on a $50 camera. I bought this 15, 16-ish years ago on eBay for $50, and this was my only camera for several years. I had one camera body, a 50mm f1.4 lens, and tons of budget Walgreens and CVS branded film. I didn't know anything about shutter speed or aperture or what any of the numbers on this camera really meant. I just spent that time learning through a lot of trial and error and trying different things out. Especially back then, that was such a different time. We didn't have photos of our cameras being posted online. We didn't really have a place to post the photos online except for, MySpace. I was in charge of getting all of my friends their new profile pictures, so I took that honor very seriously. But for $50, I had a camera that lasted me years. As a matter of fact, to this day, I could still use this camera if I really needed to. I wasn't thinking what lens should I use, what format should I go with. I just had my camera, my one lens, and I was just shooting whatever was in front of me. I was focused on things like lighting and composition and how to pose my friends and help them feel more comfortable in front of the camera. I was so much more focused about creating the photo rather than what I was using and whether or not it was good enough. Even when I got my first DSLR, it was a Nikon D60 with an 18-55 kit lens, which was not a good lens. But I took that setup and did everything I possibly could with that for years before I ever upgraded to the next best thing. If you're starting out or you're on a budget, don't feel like you absolutely have to have the best thing ever if you're going to start working with clients or if you need to be taken seriously as a photographer. And as your experience and your budget grows, that doesn't mean you have to stop buying things for a budget price or at a used price. To this day, I still buy a lot of used gear for a number of different reasons. Most of the time, used gear is still going to be in pretty good shape. I definitely use my gear. I don't treat it like it's this sacred object that can never get a single scratch on it. My gear gets used for sure, but I'm also not fastballing my M6 into my car. Usually for something that has just a little bit of cosmetic wear, you're gonna pay significantly less than you would if you were to buy that same thing brand new, and especially with a lot of film stuff, you can't buy new at all. No matter what you end up buying, it's probably gonna see some bit of wear, but if it's all cosmetic and all of the internals and the physical workings of the gear is all intact, who cares about a few blemishes? A lot of my light stands, tripods, tripod plates, lighting modifiers like softboxes or reflectors, a lot of that stuff I buy used. Even if you're buying something that you're gonna go shoot a wedding with, as long as it's tested and it's reliable gear, again, if you're buying used, you're gonna save a lot of money that way. And again, you can do so much with very, very little. I think I can hear this thing rattling around actually, but still good. And this is my personal camera that I learned everything on, so I'll always keep this one. But another thing to keep in mind is just letting go of some of that older gear so that other people can enjoy it and, buy their own budget gear. Think of it kind of like recycling. It's better for that gear to go to somebody who's going to get a lot of good use and a lot of enjoyment out of it rather than it just sitting in your closet somewhere. Less cameras and lenses and just photography equipment in general that's going to end up in a landfill one day. And if you sell that stuff, you've obviously obviously got more money to put towards other things, whether that be your, gear and camera budget or just other things like traveling whenever that becomes a thing again. You can put it towards film, you can put it towards rent, you can really put it towards anything. I don't think I need to explain why you sell things. Really, all of this is just to remind you it's about the photographer, it's not about the gear. And I have invested a lot of money into the cameras and lenses and gear that I use. That is not lost on me. I have spent well over a decade working really hard to get to that point, to buy gear that I personally really enjoy, gear that inspires me, but I know at the end of the day, if all of that gear was lost in a fire or taken away from me in any way, if all I had left was this Minolta XGM and a 50mm lens, this would not stop me from documenting and creating. So don't be quick to just brush off budget gear, no matter what your skill level or budget really is. Don't look over that stuff so quickly, because there's still so much you can do with such little gear. I hope this video serves as a good reminder for you, and again, huge shout out to KEH Camera for sponsoring this video. They are the #1 place when it comes to buying and selling used gear. Whether you're looking for camera bodies, for film or digital, lenses, accessories, KEH has everything. They've got an incredible selection with a really great rating system as well, so you're more than likely going to end up with some gear that you thought was going to be in worse condition than it really is. And if you have any of that stuff that you would like to sell, like we talked about earlier, they'll even have someone come to your house and pick it up so you never have to leave. It's a great company with a lot of great people involved who are all passionate about photography and storytelling. So definitely check KEH out if you're interested in buying or selling used gear. All the links can be found in the description down below. If you guys have any questions or thoughts of your own, please leave them in the comments down below. But that is going to be it for today. Thank you guys for everything. I love you. I'll see you next time.